My name is Hannah. I'm a senior at NMSU. I'm actually on track to graduate this May. I'm currently doing my student teaching. I will be graduating with a bachelor's degree in education. And today I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my experience studying abroad, concerns that I had before I went, how I chose my program, and a little bit about what that experience was like. So to start, I had 3 different friends in high school who did an exchange program in high school for a year. So one of them went to France, I had a friend who went to Japan, and a friend who went to Germany. And because I saw them go through that experience and talk about how incredible it was, I knew that I wanted to try and do that while I was in college. I actually chose New Mexico State University specifically because I knew that they had such a great education abroad program. So I had the opportunity to go abroad in spring of my sophomore year, which was spring of 2019. And I went to the University of Roehampton in London for just 1 semester. When it came to choosing which program I wanted to go on, the choice was pretty easy. I was a huge Harry Potter fan growing up, and I've loved a lot of different stories that have taken place in England, and so I knew I wanted to go to England and specifically London. So I remember walking into the education abroad office in my freshman year, and I basically said, I really want to go to London, what you got? And the advisor was super nice and pointed me in the direction of like 3 or 4 universities in London and in the UK. And I chose Roehampton kind of randomly, but it ended up really working out and being the most beautiful university located in the quietest little suburb in southwest London, but close enough to the city center that if I wanted to hop on a train and go for the day, I totally could. I could not have chosen a better university for my program, so it really ended up working out. I definitely had some concerns before studying abroad. I think the biggest one was probably affordability. I was really worried that studying abroad would be way too expensive and something that was just out of my budget. But as soon as I went in for an appointment, the Office of Education Abroad explained that I could use my scholarships that I was currently getting to pay for my program. And they also helped me choose an exchange program, which meant that I would continue to pay NMSU tuition even though I was attending the university in London. So that made everything that much more affordable and kind of took away those concerns that I was having about price. The other thing that I was really nervous about is that, as my fellow education students will understand, the end of an education degree, you have to complete practicum in student teaching, which requires you to be partnered with a local school. So I was really worried that I wouldn't have enough time within my program to be able to study abroad. But because I planned ahead enough, it ended up not being a problem. And I also learned that there are summer programs and even student teaching programs available abroad in Belize and Thailand, which I didn't end up getting to do because of COVID, so I ended up having to do my student teaching here. But basically, if you're an education student, don't feel like you can't make a study abroad program work, because you definitely can. The last kind of concern that I had before going abroad was super basic one, but I was extremely nervous. I had never been off of the North American continent before in my life. The idea of moving to another country alone was pretty terrifying for me. I'm a pretty introverted person who I love to travel, but I was just a little bit nervous about what it would be like to move to another country without my family and my friends and go out of my comfort zone that much. And if I could tell anything to my past self who was super nervous to study abroad, I would say that I basically had no reason to be nervous, because the people at NMSU who work at the Education Abroad office are super friendly and helpful. The people who were at my international university were friendly and helpful. They even connected me with lots of other exchange students once I arrived. So I had other people who were going through the same thing, and we went through it together and kind of adjusted to the new culture and adjusted to the new normal together. And so I wasn't alone the whole time, which was really nice. So if you're nervous, that's natural, but just know that it doesn't take too long to get over those nerves, settle in, and figure out a routine, and then have the most incredible experience. As far as my actual experience in London goes, I feel like I keep using the word incredible, but that's exactly what it was. It was an incredible experience. I loved the city. I loved being able to go to museums and use public transport, which I'd never used before since I lived in cruises, and all of these new and different exciting things that come with living in a big international city like that. The classes that I took at Roehampton were extremely interesting. They also have a very different school system, so I was only taking technically 3 classes, and I only had those each for an hour once a week. But then their school system requires a lot of independent study. So you're doing a lot of like reading at the library and writing essays. So it was just so different from anything I'd done at NMSU before and required a lot more of independent work from me, which was a unique challenge at first, but ended up being really nice. I ended up really liking that learning style. Another really cool thing was that at the university I was at, I didn't have to buy any textbooks. Any textbook I needed, they had at the library, and I could just rent it for the week that I needed it and then return it, which saved me a ton of money and also the hassle of having to figure out how to get rid of those textbooks before I had to move back home to the States. In terms of like rigor, it wasn't anything harder, it was just different and required a lot more independent, like self-motivation. Those are just a few differences that I noticed with the school system. Another really cool thing is that the university I was at had a children's literature collection at their library of first editions of books like Peter Pan and Peter Rabbit, and I am a language arts focus in education, so that was really cool for me to be able to see. Outside of academics, I had lots of incredible opportunities to be able to explore England, London, and even other countries in Europe. So traveling within Europe I found to be really affordable, especially because I packed everything in a backpack that I could fit under the seat in front of me, so I didn't have any carry-on or other luggage that I had to pay for. So I got really, really cheap flights and was able to go to a bunch of other countries like France and Germany and a few others to really kind of get the most out of my experience during breaks and weekends, those kinds of things. So I feel like I barely touched on my study abroad experience, and there's like 100 different facets of studying abroad that you could spend an individual video talking about. Like I could talk about my host university for an entire video in and of itself. I could talk about traveling while studying abroad as a whole video, but hopefully that gives you kind of like an overview of what an experience studying abroad looks like. It was definitely an out of my comfort zone experience that I don't think I could have gotten any other way. It was also a really unique way to be able to travel and see the world a little bit in a way that was a little bit more affordable than just going over for a vacation, since I was staying at a university. I made a ton of friends with other exchange students who are from different areas of the United States, and I still keep in contact with them today. So there are just so many things that I wouldn't have as part of my life if I hadn't, taken that risk and taken that leap and done this study abroad experience. And as cliche as it sounds, I would do it all over again in a heartbeat. So all I can say is that if you're feeling even the slightest bit interested in doing a study abroad program, I would say go for it. Ask the questions that you have, research programs, and take that risk even if you're feeling nervous, because it can end up being one of the most life-changing experiences that you ever get to have while you're at college. So hopefully this was helpful to hear about my experience. Really appreciate you listening if you stuck around all the way to the end. Then best of luck. I hope that you get to go where you want to go and have just as amazing of an experience.